Hi there, and welcome to The Artist's Craft. I'm your host, Stacey Cochran, and we've got an excellent guest in studio today. All the way from Asheville, North Carolina, Danny Bernstein is with us. And Danny is the author of Hiking the Carolina Mountains, which I have a copy of here. So tell us a little bit about Hiking the Carolina Mountains.
Well, first, hiking the Carolina Mountains is a wonderful thing to do. We have wonderful trails in that area. Now, the book is a book of traditional hikes that I felt were the best hikes in the area, starting at Mount Mitchell all the way out to the Tennessee border and including upstate South Carolina. And it's organized in hikes as opposed to trails, and it goes from anything from a 2-mile hike to about a 13-mile hike.
So what is one of your favorite, let's say, shorter hikes from 3 to 6 miles?
Well, one of the best places is DuPont State Forest. It is a wonderful jewel of waterfalls, and in my book I have Raleigh Vale Loop, which is about 6 miles, with the waterfall itself and several other artifacts. And if I can get a second one in, a Little Cataloochee in the Smokies is also a great 6-mile hike where you can see cabins and a chapel and a cemetery.
Now, what is one of your favorite longer hikes, say an overnight hike?
I didn't write the book with the idea of overnights, but I can see where many people might want to take a 13-mile hike and break it up. And probably the best one is the Deep Creek, Indian Creek Loop in the Smokies, where there are several campsites along the way. And there's a lot of water, like it says, Deep Creek and Indian Creek, and a couple of waterfalls.
Very nice. So now, what is the Carolina Mountains Challenge, and how can folks find out about that?
Well, what I did is I have 57 hikes in the book, and at the end I have a little chart where they can mark off when they did the hike and anything else they want to do write about the hike. And if they do it all, they ought to go to my website and let me know, and I'll send them a little certificate. So basically it's doing all the hikes in the book. It
gives them something to focus on in terms of a goal and applying it to the book.
And it also helps them to learn the area because it spreads them out rather than always going back to the same place.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the process of writing the book. Where did you first get the idea, and then when did it really start to come together for you?
Well, I've been in the area for almost 7 years, but I've been hiking since my 20s, which you figured out was a long time ago. And as soon as I came, I joined the Carolina Mountain Club, which is the largest hiking club in western North Carolina. Went with them, led hikes, and saw that there really wasn't a book that focused on hikes that were complete hikes as opposed to trail. You go from A to B, and then there's another trail from A to B, and then it was up to the reader to put the hike together. So I started just making notes, and then I said, maybe there's a book here.
So now, how did you find your publisher for this book?
Well, the classic way. I wrote a proposal, and there are lots and lots of books on how to write a proposal. I put in several sample hikes, and this book, as you noted, has a lot of history and culture having to do with the hikes about the general area. So I included that in, and I sent it off to various publishers that do outdoor books.
So tell us about the day that you found out that Milestone Press would publish your book and they were interested in it.
Well, Milestone Press is a regional publisher in western North Carolina. They only do outdoor books, hiking, biking, paddling, and they only do active books, in other words, experience-based books. And I was elated that they were interested in doing the book. They're a small company. They've been very successful. They've been around for over 15 years. And besides the traditional, being in the traditional bookstores, they're also in a lot of outdoor stores, a lot of outfitters, which is where many readers and hikers want to find books.
Now, I don't know how well you folks at home can see this, but I mean, this is a very well put together book. There's pictures, tables, maps. Tell us a little bit about the process of compiling all this together. How did you build this book, essentially?
Well, first of all, I went on all the hikes, and it may seem obvious to you, but that's probably the number one question I get when I go to a book event. Did you do all the hikes? Well, yes, that's how you write a book.
So you started with the hikes.
So when I hike, I have a GPS, which keeps track of my route. I have a camera, and I have a recorder where I record my notes, much easier than trying to write it down. So I have the hike laid out before I go, and I walk the hike, and I talk about it as I see it. And also I record the mileage and the altitude, every important point, trail junctions, things like that. And then when I come home, I sort of download myself. I download the pictures, that's the easy part. I download the GPS, and I put the track over a topo map, a topographical map, and of course all my notes. And then I start writing. Now, if you took the GPS trace and just published it in black and white, it would be unreadable. So what my publisher does is he creates much more simplified maps based on the GPS track. And then of course, I've also done a lot of research on the history of the area and the culture.
Now, I get a lot of questions from viewers and when I do presentations on how to publish a book about nonfiction books and about selling a book to a publisher that is nonfiction. Now, you said you had a proposal.
Right.
Had you written much of the book, or was it just, did you sell it just on the proposal?
I would say I had about a quarter of the book actually written, but I did sell it on the proposal, but the proposal had all the hikes I was going to do. So the publisher could see that I was going to come through with the book. Also, I had a little bit of a reader base in that I was very active both in the hiking community and in the conservation community.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the conservation issues surrounding Western North Carolina. Tell us a little bit about what the North Shore Road proposal was and where that stands now.
The North Shore Road proposal was a proposal to build a road, about a 35-mile road, from Fontana Dam to Bryson City, right through the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, right through probably the most pristine part of the park. And it came out of a 1943 agreement. Believe it or not, this particular issue is the oldest open issue in Congress, our federal Congress. Because in 1943, TVA came in and moved all the people out because they wanted to create the Fontana Dam. And part of it was, when the war is over, when Congress gives you money, we will build a road. Well, there were several tries to building bits of the road, and we actually have about 7 miles. And it stopped mostly because they ran out of money and because of environmental problems. And then in 2000, our then Congressman, Charles Taylor, put in some money to start building the road again, and that kind of erupted.
Wow.
And the National Park Service had to have hearings, and the feeling was 99.9 is that the road would be an environmental disaster.
So what was Taylor thinking? What was his motivation to build the road?
It's hard to tell because the people who wanted it, maybe it was 200 families, the descendants of people who were moved out, the descendants of people who have ancestors in the cemeteries. But I would like to point out that they can all get to those cemeteries now because the Park Service ferries them free. And then when you get to the other side, there are SUVs and vans that take people as close to the cemetery as possible. So that's not much of an issue. It's a very emotional issue. But the Park Service and the Department of the Interior came up with the final decision is that there will be no road. Instead, there will be a financial settlement with Swain County, which is the western county that where most of the people live in that, and where the road would have been. So the issue is not over, it's not closed until Swain County gets money from Congress, when Congress appropriates the money.
And who would they be paying money to?
To the county, to the, not to the individuals, to the county.
For what purpose? I mean,
The purpose was that the road that they had in there before TVA came in was flooded, and that's how you get Fontana Lake. So they lost their road, and they were still paying on the bond for the road until the 1970s. So they did actually have a financial loss. And Swain County, as a county, their officials did want the financial